please propose.
And I understand that this exercise is somewhat of a market test in itself.
Indeed.
I'm just trying to get some sense of the environment we're playing in. I don't know that we know that.
My judgment is we don't, but I think it builds on itself. I mean, you've got one or two projects going, we get two or three going, we get some momentum, we get some word out there, and maybe it'll feed on something. That's the purpose of this, though, is to test it.
One of the bits of feedback that we did receive was, you have a building under construction. It's really a new product in our market, in our downtown market.
Right.
People are standing back and saying, okay, how's it gonna go?
Exactly.
You know, what's gonna happen in 2016 when they open the doors and they start leasing the building? How quickly does it lease up? What are the rent rates? And we'll have a true indicator of what the market is. The other thing that's interesting that's currently going on, Walker John has a proposal on this week's site plan review committee for another project. So, there's those two dynamics going on. On one hand, people are recognizing opportunity and are moving forward with projects. On the other hand, they're sitting back and saying, I'm not sure I'm ready to invest in a new building. Interesting. We're at a very interesting point in that.
I would just suggest that everyone in the room might want to get a pre-lease on Columbia Heights now.
There you go.
Yeah,
So, if I may,
please.
so, I just want to add to what's already been said. Folks with the biggest incentive are the property owners in our own town. Those are the folks that I think hopefully will recognize that they have a community that cares about them, that they have a community that wants to partner with them and help them build things that the community wants, and that are marketable and feasible. And this is a way to both create public value and help our own community property owners that are dealing with both actual and sort of circumstantial adverse market realities. And I think there's both. I think, and this is a test for that. I mean, this is an opportunity for property owners here to seek investors and say, you know, with this kind of a structure to the deal, this is feasible. Will you partner with me to get my asset out from being underwater and move it to a different spot?
And we've had discussions with property owners, and I think that's a real possibility.
Right.
They also want to know there's a city that's willing to work with them.
Exactly. So that's the other part of the equation. It's not a matter of just going out there and casting the net for the white knight, but it's also acknowledging where we are as a community and dealing with the challenges that our own local property owners are struggling with, and saying, let's partner to work with you to make something that's really, really good. That's also the point. If we can build trust and get, you know, confidence with to have people join in, and with that. More?
When we were talking about the selection process, all I want to make sure is that all financially feasible projects, I like this two-tiered approach that everything comes in. And remember, everything that comes in, we can also use that information to help us with other strategies and plans we're working on. So we have the technical and the stakeholders kind of do that first vetting process, make sure it's really feasible. Because I don't want to send out to the public something that they get their hopes up and can't possibly come to fruition. So we want to be realistic about what our options are, and then we can maybe go to the public so they can view it, so they see the transparency, they see us coming along with this process.
parking lot list of things that I can bring forward, but before I go there, I have some things that I've just been holding back on that I think are really quick. So when we talk about proposal requirements and preferences in the RFP, it starts on page 13 and continues on to the top of 15. But some of the things that and you know, you have to decide whether or not this is adding value or not. But in terms of proposal requirements and preferences, you know, I would like to know from any proposal whether or not there's they want to ask for any special consideration or variance requests from the city. I want, this is in there, sort of, but I was looking for just a more explicit way of saying what specific requests for city assistance, what the public contribution is gonna be. Under number 2, it might be worth saying that for some properties, visualization or rendering of the end product might be desirable. And then here's a slightly more, hoping I can articulate this really simply, but it is just the very first paragraph under proposal requirements and preferences on page 13. Something that was just been on my mind is being able to explain and be out front that for those proposals where there is not very much of a feasibility gap in the market and the city doesn't have to contribute very much, it's probably not going to be as important to have a deep rationale in terms of public benefit.
Right, it's proportionate.
Right.
I think
But, yeah, but if there is a sizable feasibility gap and there's a larger expectation from public involvement, then there really needs to be a clear representation of what the community benefit is. So it's just somehow it's explaining that. And it's almost explaining it both to our public as well as explaining it to applicants. But I do see opportunities out there that, you know, just a small contribution from the city would make something feasible. You know, just even a property realignment and a couple of different, the Vine Street project is actually, I mean, this partially started building. I mean, I think that there are all kinds of opportunities there. There might not be much of a push from the city, but okay, so then that gets me to my parking lot things that I've been sort of looking from the conversation I'll return to, if that's okay with me. So, friendly versus adverse condominium. What isn't, I didn't see it in, spelled out explicitly in the RFP, and it keeps coming up. It's interesting, in some cases, the whole condemnation issue has been coming up as thing that people are concerned about, but it's coming from people that aren't property owners. It's almost like it's being brought up as if it's like a red herring. So, you know, because it's interesting, the people that are currently creating a lot of buzz around condemnation issues are folks that aren't property owners. So they're, you know, it's almost like it's this is a horrible thing because of that, but what's your real interest in that?
Yeah, I'm gonna wanna be careful how we phrase that, but I get the point.
So, but I think that we've had some discussion around this issue that hasn't been brought out at all in the current RFP. And that's, it's been, there's only limited interest in using condemnation authority. And that's in those instances where there hasn't been any occupancy and economic activity for a period of at least 7 years. And then I think there are certain situations where friendly condemnation might be of interest
Yes.
to a property owner. So don't we want to say that somewhere in the RFP? Or we don't want to say that in the RFP? How do we, what was the thinking? Because it's just absent.
Well, the city is prepared under the appropriate circumstances to exercise its condemnation powers and will work with property owners. To the developers who are coming from the outside, to the extent we can get a hold of property that they can use, they're not fearful of condemnation. To property owners who would like, who want to sell or want the tax benefit of selling under threat of condemnation, it can be actually advantageous to them. Some would just rather sell. But there are then those people who, for ideological and other reasons, just think condemnation is a confiscatory power of government that should never be used, particularly if it leads to ultimately private development. So I don't think we have to get into that. I think the people we're trying to communicate with can understand that under the right circumstances, if we have the legal authority, we're prepared to exercise it. That should give them some comfort for those who want to help out. And I don't want to make and for people who, in a friendly condemnation, quote unquote, who want to get the benefit of it, it has to be a real threat of condemnation, not a wink and a nod necessarily. So I want to be a little bit careful. So I don't want to make it more of it than it is. I'm hopeful it won't have to be used at all. And if it is, it'll make a lot of sense to everybody. And I just don't want to get into it. I hear nothing. I don't think we win a lot of points by talking to them.
So I understand that, and I guess there's two parts to this right now in my thinking. I mean, I get you're not. I don't think any of us really see an advantage to condemnation. Except possibly in the case of one property. You know, if we have a property owner that is just tuned out, not wanting to do anything, you know. But we still have sort of, we've put a frame around it, at least in our initial discussions. But you're saying we don't need to memorialize that in the RFP process?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Happy to talk about it to people, and the power is there. It's there for public projects without CRA. It's there for private projects under the right CRA facts. But it's not something people are anxious to do. We're not gonna. You have to buy the property too, of course. Even when you condemn it, you have to pay for it. So
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're good. Okay. Then got just one last thing, I think, I mean, unless somebody has something else, and it's coming back to what Julie brought up at the front end of the meeting, just in terms of, our, what ongoing outreach looks like. What, and, that's just sort of closing the loop on that earlier part of the discussion, and I think that we should continue to use the materials that were put together for the open house situations. Do the refinements that we've already talked about, but continue to engage with people. And I think that might be presentations to, I think I mentioned this before, but like the chamber and other places. Are there other things that we should do? Are there other next steps? And did I capture everything that
Yeah.
you were saying earlier?
Yes, also though, I'm just trying to think of, because some of what I heard was, well, when does the public get to have or who's gonna make the decisions and where? And I think if we had some way of having a timeline, and I know it's not gonna be precise, because we're still, the process is still happening, but just kind of a sequence of events, like, so the next place the public is a public hearing, and even to do with where the council comes in each time, to just have it laid out. The council will be talking about it at the retreat, we're going to have a public hearing, of the public will have this, the next step then is this, we will be getting some, maybe some people from the public, some members will be joining on that committee as part of the stakeholder committee, so there's that point. Then there'll be proposals that are accepted, reviewed, then we'll go back to the public to have a discussion over it, then whatever that next step is with the council, it's just really laying it out, so that when they say, I don't understand, you're just doing this, all up by yourself, we can say, no, here's the very clear process.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
So for example, we do have a timeline of
Right.
sorts, but could I suggest we do a 1 or 2 pager on, say, public involvement during the CRA process?
That would be
That
good.
puts a narrative out there about where the intersection points are
Mhm.
and lays it out.
That would be really helpful.
In addition to sort of the presentations, and, maybe there's a need for a communications plan in which we schedule these things, so someone's at the Rotary this month, and at the Chamber this month, and at the Library Board this month, and at the Editorial Board periodically. So there's a plan, so everyone can get comfortable.
Yes.
Because I think the hearing that's gonna take place in January will be great, and it'll follow right after a pretty successful open houses. But then there's gonna be sort of a silent period, and we need to fill that up to make sure people are engaged.
One thing we may want to think about is, when we're comfortable with the final draft of the request for proposals or qualifications, is to have another open house. Invite the community back in and spend some time explaining what the open house is, or what the request for proposals is, and drilling into it a little bit deeper. We were able to talk about it in pretty general terms at the open house. In another month, we're gonna be able to talk about it specifically. Here's what we're proposing, here's why, here's how we're doing it. And that would be an opportunity to get out to the public.
Right. To keep them informed, and where.
It's an interesting question, just I'll ask it rhetorically. Who is the public that maybe we can define it more narrowly and make sure we have a communication strategy that gets to those people.
It's the stakeholders, that, immediate property owners, it's also like the neighborhoods, so that they are kind of just feeling like they're part of the process and that they're aware of
Are
it.
there community groups?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, there are advocates, that have their own special interests around,
Were
Friends of
they-
the Waterfront, that,
Would it make sense to have a monthly newsletter that's 2 pages that
well,
would just refer?
I was almost thinking that it was a website kind of thing. We did create a
defined a few additional products, how do we can measure success? What are some of the already noted opportunities for public involvement? How you can stay in touch? And then maybe a list of visits, once they get scheduled, that people might go to, to show that we're really trying.
Mhm.
But it's, it's like pushing a string, you never know when you have quite enough. All you can do is come up with a plan and implement it.
Yeah, so, and just adding to that a little bit, I mean, we have a community that's very interested in its downtown. So even when I've gone to neighborhood association meetings in the last couple of months, so periodically I go out and sit in on a neighborhood association meeting, and people ask me about what's going on in downtown. And it varies from everything from, groups that are, car line, or groups that are fairly, some ways out of town, that even blanking on Bob Jones's neighborhood association.
Goldcrest.
Goldcrest, but even Goldcrest, those folks they want to know. So, and then we have the Economic Development Council, and that works with realtors and other folks. They want to know what's going on, and they are used to being brought up to date with what's happening in Lacey and Lacey with Woodland District, and Tumwater with the brewery development project. And we need to keep them appraised of this so that they can get out to their members, because that's a network we want to reach, and the chamber and all those folks. So it is an ongoing process of keeping this in front of people. Okay.
Just
Beat
to,
it into the ground completely.
yeah, absolutely, that's my goal.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I really like the idea of this project schedule that Julie talked about, of a two-pager FAQ, of a web page that has a variety of summary documents on it, and a communication plan that probably is a live animal as we move through time. But providing those bullet points, I think, is a really important part of keeping the story straight, and that being probably is made available to a number of people. Certainly all council members could benefit from having access to a communication plan.
I think it's also ultimately good marketing for the developer interests. We want that the community is mobilizing, they care, they're gonna welcome, hopefully welcome good design, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
So thanks for the segue, because you talked about, to be successful, we do need to outreach to the development community.
Yes.
And so we really haven't talked about that, except that they certainly are a potential stakeholder in this group, in this universe that we're talking about. So there may be some targeted materials to them as well that aren't of general circulation, I don't think. So.
Right, although word of mouth among economic development folks and the architects and the bankers, they were really looking for investors and developers. This would be good, a little buzz.
That actually reminded me that on the RFP schedule on page 18, the timeline, it doesn't include the finance seminar. Remember the finance seminar?
The bidders conference.
No, within DC.
Yeah, so the finance seminars, I actually think of that as a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's marketing.
Exactly, but it also helps the local property owners understand what they can then go out and use to market to other people, to get them to join forces with the team up. So anyway, so that
Good.
just reminded me of that.
that January date?
We, I think we're just continuing, I mean, we will have the date.
All right.
I don't know if it's January now, but,
Close to mine.
The end of June.
but, we're,
Oh, is it March now?
I,
This is the- Oh, wait, oh, this one.
thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
So, what I would suggest is that at our next Community and Economic Revitalization Committee, we come back with revised draft and some of the other materials that we've talked about here, and continue the conversation about how we move this request for something, process forward. That would likely occur after the council retreat.
Yeah, so the, and the, on the council retreat, and I think that's an opportunity for us to share the momentum that's been created by the open housing. So it's those defined pieces, it's giving the council an opportunity to collectively, discuss this stuff. And I hope, get excited about these next steps. So I would focus, some of the refinement of what does success look like, the vision, and these final documents as being ready and available at the retreat time, so that we can have a discussion around where we are.
And some ownership,
Yeah.
some buy-in, if you will.
You gave us plenty of work on that.
Yeah. So coming back to vision and what does success look like, if I'm right, you volunteered for distribution.
Well, I'm gonna give it to Keith and for you.
Great, because that's what I wanted to ask about, was how do we communicate about this? And gosh, if Tom was here, I know I'd
Well, so let me refresh you. I will give a rendering of all my notes on success and vision, as I've already read them out earlier tonight to Keith. So he'll be doing the sharing, and you can provide input directly back to him, not in a message to the whole committee, but individual messages to Keith, and Keith will do the compilation. So that will, in terms of, there won't be any public meeting aspect of it, it'll just all go through Keith's staff.
Thanks for the clarification.
Great.
All right. Well, whenever we start talking about projects, I get excited. So I have enough to feed my own development fantasies through the holidays.
We have to get you talking to developers.
I would love to talk to developers, but I think we have some tremendous opportunities here. So I get excited about this stuff. So with that,
Thank you.
happy holidays.
Thank you, you too.
All right. We're adjourned.
Steve, are you gonna share the flop jackets?
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that.